So
Hi, this is BZ Rieger, and I've got Sheila and, what was that? Sheila and David and Lisa, and they're in Knoxville, Tennessee, and they're going to give us a wrap-up of today's alleged sentencing hearing, which took 3 hours to go.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, it did. And, well, I mean, so do you want us to just tell you, first of all, what happened and then go blow by blow after that? Or how would you like to do this?
Well, I'd like to do it kind of in a concise way to give me a sense. I can ask just a few general questions, and then you can kind of take us through the different parts so that it's, you know, kind of like the short notes, and then when I can pull from some things that you're saying to get more detail. Does that work?
Okay, that sounds great. Well,
okay. So it was an open hearing, and were there many people in attendance?
There were, yeah, 15.
And did you notice anybody that was in the, we would call them the suits department, aside from?
There were more than 5 actually, but there were a whole bunch over on one side where normally during the regular trial where Randy and his elbow sat, there were at least 3 suits over there that never spoke, never did anything but sit over there at that table.
Just been an observation.
Could have been.
Right.
I looked for Marshall's pins, and only one of those 3 appeared to be wearing a pin, but I couldn't tell if it was a Marshall pin or not. Most of them, well, all of the marshals in suits wear these little pins.
Right.
There were at least 2, I think it was, marshals in just jackets, like windbreakers in the back, in addition to
the reason I asked that is
suits.
The reason I asked it is kind of a programming note, because some may already know this and it's obvious, and some may not realize it yet, but we actually have, in essence, 2 DOJs operating in effect right this moment. We've got the deeply ingrained swamp one, and we've got the new clean one. And so new suits or additional suits in the theater, we'll say, of things unfolding, could very possibly be some that are just observational from the new clean DOJ.
I see. Okay, well that's encouraging news.
And was Parker still there?
There were no, Parker still was not. However, Jason Pack was in attendance.
Okay.
So I thought,
who was representing the U.S. attorneys? 3 of them, or just 2?
It was just 2, Cynthia Davidson and Anne-Marie Sfolto. The other fella, yeah, I think that's the one that they usually use for the AV. He looked like the same fella from the trial that they use like an assistant to run an AV. Oh, you're talking about the 3rd guy that was sitting right next to Anne-Marie? No, that was Jason Pack. That was the FBI sitting right next to the U.S. attorney. I mean, the entire time, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, no, he wasn't the AV guy. That was Jason Pack.
Okay, and then just to kind of an overview, we published the rules, the way
Easy,
that
you're robo.
For an overview, can you hear me now? We published the overview from the court, how the hearing would go, and did the hearing kind of go in that flow, the way that it was published?
For the most part, there was a little bit of a change up as far as the judge granting Heather to speak her allocution, as well as I can't remember what else he called it. Yeah, her closing, not closing, but there's two things that, because she's pro se, there's an allocution stage where the defendant has the last word before the judge pronounces sentence. But as pro se, she also had the ability to say other things. Because she's both, she elected to do that in a different fashion, and the judge allowed it. So it opened up, of course, with Heather restating a lot of articles, documents as still standing and to be put forth as if in full, as she has with all others. And I think I wrote them all down correctly. I know that there will be a transcript of all this, but it was 18, 101, 102, 147, 149, 150, 151, and then they mentioned 197 as well. And then
Lloyd got up and did like a blanket statement of all. I know she specifically mentioned, she's like, there are some that are still standing. She wanted, I guess, to reiterate them, and then she said there are some that were oral standing. So she was kind of going over those, and then Lloyd at the end got up and added a blanket statement for all of them. So
right, and to include all precipes that were written as well.
Right.
Now Lloyd did have a specific objection that was also, in the flow in regards to the level 2 enhancement of the sentencing.
Right.
And that he felt that there was no indication of those special rules should not have applied in that case. And he gave an example as to why he felt that was the case.
What was Varlin's ruling on that?
Overruled. That it didn't hold water, I guess, with him for the way it was.
Well, they want the points, because each point actually is representation of a monetary value for the monetary system of the court.
Right.
Well, and he did specify at the end when he was reading everything, he did specify those points that you're referring to specifically. So that will be in the transcripts as well. So I find that interesting.
I'm going to reiterate that to be clear, because a number of people know what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that the points that are given they go to the whole process of how this particular case, is then monetized and can be traded through the bonding system. So the more points, the more value that the case has, which beefs up the bonds, which beefs up the whole system of the kickbacks. It's a business. So I just wanted to make sure. Some people think that I'm talking about the points relate to how much time that they can assess to Heather, but it really is, it's kind of an item on your shopping list, and they want to add more items because that gives them more revenue.
Right. Yes.
So why don't you give us what would you say were the highlights of what Heather was talking about when she had her pro se hat on?
Well, Heather, when she had her chance to speak, of course, she just reiterated, you know, a lot from the case, the fact that, you know, that there was ridicule throughout the case for what she had been doing, that she pointed out that in point of fact, it's playing out in DC right now. You know, she did point out to Ms. Davidson in particular that she was sort of made fun of in regards to the threat against POTUS. And here it is now being played out right now in DC. And of course, you know, Lisa and I both, we witnessed them, Ms. Folto and Ms. Davidson, just kind of looking at each other, laughing again, as though, you know, oh, sure, you know, that's, and so apparently, I mean, I realize that they're in court every day, and perhaps they don't, because I'm sure that, you know, C-SPAN doesn't run reruns on that. I don't know, maybe they're not aware of what's going on with the FBI up there on Capitol Hill the last little bit there. I don't know, just could be me, but yeah, when she was talking about,
David, say that again.
You know, when she originally brought out the.
Sorry. I asked Sheila if when she was saying that they were making fun of her or laughing, I didn't realize that was happening today. I thought it was, but it was kind of hard to see. And so she said, yes, that was. It wasn't in the past, only in the past. It was also today.
No, right up front and like right behind Davidson and Folter.
And when Heather made reference to the threat on POTUS, which she said I mentioned to everybody here back in January, is now that's coming out now. And the girls exchanged looks at each other that were puzzling and went, no, it didn't. Like they missed that memo. they had no idea that there was any real threat on POTUS. There was a lot of, I don't know, I'm not even sure what to describe it as, really, going on.
It's still very clear the level of cognitive dissonance that's going on amongst the folks in that room is still very high. Everything that she said in regards, of course, and ignored, and they were asked, by the way, of when they first started, if there was going to be any witnesses on either side. And there wasn't for the United States, but there was for Heather.
Two, right?
And so,
Bill and Yusuf?
Yes, that's right, Bill and Yusuf. And so they were able to make a statement on Heather's, you know, how did they know her and what did they know of her, what type of person she was.
They both did an incredible, I think they both did an incredible job. That was very, I would think it would be very, from my perspective, very intimidating, you know, to get up there, and especially, you know, her husband. And so it was pretty, I think they did a good job.
Yeah, it was pretty
David, can you give us some details, just an overview of when Yusuf spoke and then when Bill spoke?
So Bill spoke first, and so, you know, they swore him in, and he so Lloyd actually got up there and kind of helped him along, you know, asking his name, yada, yada, yada. And then he basically did, you know, we met in, I don't remember, 2011, 2012, something like that. And he went into the details about how they, that he had published, you know, I guess a video on a blog that had gotten, you know, a lot of people to notice. And this is stuff that I didn't know or hadn't connected, that it had been Bill that had, you know, was the one that published that. And so he said that that's how they met, I guess online, and then the next year they met in Morocco in person. And I know he said that she had invited several bloggers to Morocco, and Davidson comes back later when she's able to follow up or cross-examine or whatever it's called. And she's like, so yeah, see, she was internet hungry. She invited bloggers to Morocco, specifically bloggers, and then Heather eventually was able to follow up on that. And she's like, well, they were bloggers that were basically exposing the corruption that we're talking about here. So, so that was interesting. Yeah, it was great. And so he talked about his background in 25 years in computers, and he pointed out that was it Duran, the guy from UT PD that was on the cyber, somehow nominated on the FBI type cyber force or whatever, and he's like, well, he has a political science degree, but yet he's being tasked with finding out a cyber crime with the Federal Reserve, and so I thought that was a great point.
Yeah, Bill spoke a bit about how the chain of evidence was never actually presented properly. There was never any evidence presented from the Federal Reserve showing that there was an attempt, even. None of the ACH movements were presented in a way that they should have been presented from the originating place. And that, Bill was just speaking to the fact that this person who's claiming this is a cyber crime and all of this, those spreadsheets were not proof of anything. They were just, that's an easy thing that can be changed.
A clever way to not show what, obviously there's a reason that they're doing that. They're not showing you the Federal Reserve logs.
Well, they have backroom screens that actually show all of the movement. It's
right.
Something that's the actual forensic trail that cannot be mucked with.
Right.
So you don't show them, and then you don't have to say that you did or didn't muck with them.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and he talked a little bit about the phone calls, or so-and-so called, and on their word, they made the arrest or whatever, but there was no warrant. So I thought I liked he filled in a lot of blanks for me anyway. And he also spoke as far as her character. He's like, she's so, he's spent so much time with her, and she's so genuine, and she's without fail has been trying to help everyone, and even in the midst of, this, he's like, this trial, I don't know how it's going to end. But he's like, the person that you saw here or that was presented here is not her. And so, yeah, I thought it was great.
And what about Yusuf?
And Yusuf was tough. He got up there and, 3 or 4 questions in, he started getting emotional. He was talking about his kids. And, and I heard him kind of mention under his breath when he got back that he wasn't prepared. So I don't know if he felt like that he didn't do a good job or what have you. But I think he did great.
He's come from his heart.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one of the, I wish I had my notebook. One of the most powerful things I think he said was, he's like, I don't know what to teach my kids about justice. He's like, because this is, this isn't justice. She absolutely doesn't deserve to be there. She's like, all this is making the Federal Reserve, I don't know if he said specifically Federal Reserve, but he said it's just making those people richer. He's like, that all of this just to make those folks richer. He's like, I don't even know what to teach my kids. I thought that was, and he talked about them, their ages, and he's like, the last year they've been asking me, or they told him, make sure that you bring mom home, with you. And he's crying, I'm crying. So yeah, it was gut wrenching, I think. And what an interesting dynamic that Heather, as presenting herself, she got to ask some questions of them, kind of little points that, you know, either a little bit of review with Bill, but what she wanted to make sure that was brought out in court and on the record. And she's like, she asked Yusuf, she's like, you know, there was a long time when you didn't even know exactly what I was up to or what I was doing, you know, but have you ever seen me take advantage or use my special skill, you know, in a malicious way or to take advantage of someone? And he's like, absolutely not. He's like, you know, quite the opposite. So, but it was interesting because normally, you know, a married couple, their communications would be privileged. So to see them, not only was it emotional, you know, she hasn't seen him in however long, they can't cut, you know, I was like, you know, that's awful in of itself, but to have her having to hear him talk about her kids, you know, but still maintain her composure.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. But yeah, he's just like, it's not justice. She just doesn't belong there. And he said, you know, I've always seen her help people. And it's just ironic that she's trying to help everybody in here, you know, that she's not doing it for fame. She's done it a lot on her dime or, you know, and she's like, and to, you know, it's hurting me, it's hurting our family, you know, so yeah.
I have to say that that when Heather spoke, of course, very eloquent as always, but she talked about how this has all been about bringing out the corruption from every aspect of it. And she went into detail and entered into the record in some fashion, the detail about the cleanup that she had, the quo warranto, I guess it's called. I saw it briefly on the screen, and I saw that it was dated some time ago, and so I'll be looking forward to getting a chance to see that when it comes out.
She went through item 16 she read it out, talking about the actors and that's what you're talking about.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and I was surprised they let her keep reading it out, but it was, you know, talking about basically people that now know or should know or if they know, but they continue to, you know, play along, I guess, is that their personal liability, or at least that's what, you know, since the corporate veil is no longer, or the government veil or what have you.
Right.
But she also said, but actually, that's how the powers that were would have had it play out. But she's like, but actually the factualized trust covers everybody, you know, individually. So she kind of reiterated that she was, you know, looking out for everyone's value. And she's like, you know, you guys are basically attacking, it's not verbatim, but she's like, you guys are talking about personal liability or responsibility. And she's like, I've been very prudent the entire time with everything that I've done, trying to keep, you know, all of you guys alive and keep Randy from being disappeared and keep, you know, yeah.
She stated, and I wrote this one down verbatim, she stated, when systems are upgraded, they should work like the way they are designed to for the folks that create them.
Say that again.
They should work in the manner in which they're supposed to for the folks that created them. And she, like I said, like David said, this quo warranto, she went into great detail in describing the foreign actors and the foreign agents and all of that were to be exposed during this cleanup.
She said it's been followed to its T the entire time, and I guess was when it was originally submitted to the Washington court, and it was basically the entire thing was designed to. And she said the people at the top have this document. I guess it's spun off of the paradigm report. Yeah,
right.
You know, and so whether that trickled down, most likely did not. You know, the powers at the top had this information since, you know, whenever the report came out, and but yet So it was specifically an operation to expose or have them expose themselves, basically.
Right.
She also did go into a bit of information in regards to the prison bonds, explaining too that it was going to be created from the PSR, which is the
Wait. When you're speaking, Sheila, you need to look at the camera. When you turn your face to the side, it cuts off your mic.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I was looking at my notes.
I know.
And I'm not as good a note taker as Katie is, so
That's okay.
I apologize. Which, Katie girl, we missed you today.
Yeah, she said the pre-sentence report. I forgot how she phrased it, but she basically said that that was a monetary instrument of some sort.
Yes.
Right. She did go into that. So that will be in the record as well. And that is how it relates to human trafficking and slavery, and that is part of all of what is being done here.
Right.
She also went into the fact of how, the FBI was actually created as an arm of the Federal Reserve back when J. Edgar Hoover and Mellon, both are from banking families. That back when that was created, those were the guys in charge of creating it. And
kind of fantasy,
right.
gobbledygook.
Davidson was saying that?
I'm sorry again?
Well, you broke up. David had said that was fantasy gobbledygook, and I was asking if Davidson had said that.
She did not say gobbledygook today.
This time. She said it last.
I think she said fantasy or something like that, but Heather was talking about it, referencing how basically a lot of the information that, was just disregarded or dismissed repeatedly,
Right.
But that actually, Mellon and Hoover, that was publicly available. That's, it's not hidden or hasn't been hidden.
And did I understand you correctly to say that Heather was able to speak and get on the record today a lot about a document 98, which was the Precipe, which gave detail of all of the unfolding and the foreign actors?
It was not document 98 that she was quoting from. This was a different document. And it was one that she put in the viewer. And it, it was the Quo Warranto from Washington. And I think that it's referring to the original cleanup plan from way back when she first started on this journey. I believe it was from there.
She did mention Precipe as far as when she was restating or renewing or whatever.
When she first started.
They said the word all Precipes.
Yeah, she said all Precipes. Back
Okay.
when she was talking about the standing docks.
So it seems like that the detailed statements that Bill and Yusuf gave, and then I'm just going to use the placeholder, the cross back and forth that both U.S. and Heather as Precipe gave, took up a bulk of the time. It wasn't like there was any kind of, it was just in the normal course of her actually being given time to voice things that took up the time.
Right. Yes. And she went into a lot more detail than I was able to write down. A lot of it from the trial, reiterating things from the trial. A lot of it, again, pointing to some of the things that are happening. She mentioned the executive order that did away with the fraud division. And she also mentioned, that executive order.
And
that's
13844.
Yes. Yes.
That was on the anniversary of Randy's arrest or kidnapping.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Mentioned that.
Yes. Yes. And she was, you're right. I'm glad you brought it out like that. She was very clear in the fact that as far as she was concerned, well, Randy was not arrested. Randy was kidnapped, as there was no warrant. And she did state that, for the record as well. There was no warrant at the time that they kidnapped him.
Right. So I want to make a programming note here just for people who are listening and kind of taking this all in optics. I don't know if anybody has read or thought of anything about Q saying, but it all is not what it seems to be, and all is not what one might think, especially if one's perspective, which colors one's perception, and that is that there is a Justice Department, there's right or wrong, and there are failed trials, and you air your differences, and there comes to a just verdict. Okay, if that's your perspective, which is coloring your perception, then this is going to be a very challenging video for you.
Yes.
And today's discussion. But as everything unfolds, and this isn't just what's in Tennessee, because this is intimately related to all that is unfolding in Washington, D.C., in the whole globe, that Q uses the reference of optics. And so it's setting the stage. It's actually, these are moments and scenes in the play that must unfold so that they can actually be seen out of the closet in full context, so that then that can be completed as part of the wrapping up, we'll say, of the old stage play, so that then you can complete that and then bring all of it down. So in other words, the coming clean part is, this is one play, the coming clean part comes with that then unfolds, and then moving forward.
Yeah.
It's essentially what Heather said today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she said several times, she's like, I have no animosity or ill will basically to anybody in here. She's like, I know that, she said that the goal was to expose it and then correct it, but not in a punitive way necessarily. But she mentioned tribunals, yeah, there were several times, and I think Bill also reiterated that, and he said, it was very clear that, or it seemed very clear that we weren't mad at the government. We weren't, she's not mad at the government. She's like, I'm pro-government, I'm pro-law, but it needs to work for the people that it's supposed to work for, and not for, an elite few, or not for basically the Federal Reserve. She's like, that's basically what the courts have, been subjugated. She mentioned subjugation, subversion, collusion, and several times.
Sedition, yeah.
And she's like, I'm one of the only people that definitely don't want to hear from. And so you see, she's like, this is a great example. They use.
Say that again. She said, yeah. I'm one of, and then you broke up.
She said,
I'm someone they do not want to be heard.
So she was saying, here's a in real time example of how the Federal Reserve uses, the institutions that we think are doing something completely different, basically she's like, yeah, I had lawyer training, but it wasn't the training necessarily that I was using. It was the experience of seeing these things that many of you don't even, or whether you're choosing not to know it or just don't know it, is actually happening with these, monetary instruments. And
she was very clear too, to get it on the record that it was that they're looking for the surety of the judicial system to whisk this away. And she was also very clear in saying and letting everyone in that room know that she has operated on personal liability, accountability, everyone there, because all of the corporate and government veils are dissolved, that they too are acting as their own. She was very clear with that. So, you know, at some point now, I mean, I didn't go to law school, but I know what it means when somebody says, that was a CYA moment right there, ladies and gentlemen. That was just so you know, your employer don't got your ass because your employer is just not, you know, no, yeah, those veils are gone and your names are on these papers. So that was very clearly let out there too, and that, you know, that she was also very clear to say, I'm here as me. I'm not representing myself as an attorney. I am here as me.
Yeah, when they swore her in, right out of the gate, there was not a big to do, but I knew she was gonna. Let's she say, I'm original and I'm gonna tell the truth or whatever as myself. I'm not representing anyone. And he said it a few times. Well, you know, you're representing yourself. She's like, no, I'm here as myself. You know, just as me myself. As myself. So that's how it started, and so it was interesting. And then she, then at the end, she's like, I do not consent to. Basically, I have never consented to any of this. You guys never did show any jurisdiction. You don't have jurisdiction, and it should have been canceled. That's what that was all about. All this canceling, you know. She's like, I wasn't being rude or being frivolous. She was like, that's how it works. When you know, like, what these monitors, where they go after they leave the clerk's office, or where, you know, how they're monetized. And she said, I do not consent to detainment or sentencing, and I actually consider it, I'm being a hostage. This is basically, yes. I'm a hostage, yeah. You know, so it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt like it was definitely a lot of she was able to, because they weren't constantly jumping up with objections, she could actually put the pieces together. For me, I was able to follow it a lot better than, you know, just connecting some of the dots that I didn't understand before. So it'd be interesting if they'll take 6 months for the transcript this time, or, you know, 4 months.
Well, one of the reasons they had to wait so long was because they were hoping we would bite and pay for it, and that didn't happen. So.
Right.
Yeah, when I have to say that when the information came up again about whether or not Heather was looking for internet fame, Ms. Davidson was very clear to say, well, that may be so, but she still publishes everything, referring to the IUV, of course, but not by doing it by name, and made it very clear, which is a shame in the way that she did it, in regards to the pre-sentencing report having been put up on the IUV. And stating in court that it very clearly says on there that you're not supposed to do it. What she left out, though, because I read it, it gives you a date. You can't publish it before that date. That is very clearly, that date has way passed. So again, that's for me, that was a noticing of half the information being given in order to color someone's opinion or the way it looks or whatever, which is something that they did throughout the entire trial, including, and I talked about this morning in my live, in regards to Randy's pre-sentencing report, And the reports that, during the whole trial, they talked about the account number being 1 digit off of his Social Security. And very one time, I think, is all they actually mentioned that his actual Social Security number was used.
Today, I didn't hear them say a number change
it was in the pre-sentencing report, and they wouldn't have mentioned it very much on Heather's anyway, but it very clearly is in the pre-sentencing report, but it was not at all, hardly talked about at all. I mean, for a jury member, I'm not even sure if they got it, that it was actually his Social Security number. So, I mean, it's just another noticing for me of how, well, yeah.
Even she was talking about the FedWire, I guess with Whitney Bank, and I noticed she said, and she may not have even said this on purpose this way, but she would say they were trying to reverse it versus, and then she said refund, and those are very different things. And I was like, well, hell, I didn't think the FedWire could even be either of those, So, but the fact I think she was trying to say the fact that Heather, according to Davidson, had advised Randy to, use it a FedWire versus the ACH, which I don't know if that happened or not, was showing that she was using her special skill for a position of trust to, basically advise him all along. And she's like, well, actually, all of the transactions happened 2 or 3 days before I even spoke to Randy, right? And they're like, yeah. That was on the phone. So I was like,
yeah, and there's a little bit more of that fancy footwork.
Several times, which I knew they would. We're not here today deciding guilt. It's already been decided by a jury. We're here, talking about the pre-sentence report and appropriateness of the sentence, yada, yada, yada. And Heather even acknowledged the jury. She's like, I don't have any animosity towards them either. She's like, I can see how they arrived at the decision they did based on the information they were allowed to see, which was not all of the information.
Including and things like that. And so
and she's like, which some of that is not available to any American.
Right.
You can't access that. So I thought that was a good point.
Well, they've had pre-trial.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said they, in essence, the jury had pre-trial coaching all of their life.
Oh, I'm sure.
Before they got there, right? Because it was training and indoctrination about how things work, and so.
Right.
Yeah. No, that was clear too, just by being there as he was telling them that they would interpret the law as he gave it to them.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so can you go over was there anything that stuck out in Heather as her personal last word closing arguments that she gave, or closing conversion?
Just again, she was stating in regards to the cleanup, in regards to the fact that this is all going to come out, regardless of what they do. It's all going to come out. And I'm trying to think, there was something else that I wanted to share.
Sheila.
That yes. Oh, I was trying to think because there was something else I wanted to share. Lisa, did you have anything? Okay.
I thought it was pretty powerful. She said I knew basically that she knew it would be complicated and hard in, this case. And she's like, and I can definitely say that thinking about it or talking about it and living it and experiencing it is very different. Very different. And she's like, but it's absolutely all worth it.
Yes.
I can't remember what she said after that, but I was like, yeah, that's
Well, yeah, because it's hard on her, you know, it's a mission in what she needs to do and knows to do in her heart and is called to do by source. So it's one thing as the being who does that, and then it's another thing as the being who's the wife and the mother and
who's standing there in a drab outfit that says federal inmate on it in chains.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. It was very hard to see her like that.
Yeah. And it just the talking about optics, you know, the microphone where she had to be was, you know, if you're not in chains, it's 3 steps, but you know, she just moving and just the constriction of that is so dehumanizing and just complicated and you know, it's absolutely, of course, done on purpose.
Yes.
And the guard standing behind her and she would move and, you know, she's like, I just need, so it was, that's tough. And she seemed, in my opinion, when she walked in, she seemed tired. And but by the end, again, in the middle, she was in the flow. And then as I got closer to it, she got a little bit emotional. That's the first time I've heard her, you know, kind of pleading for her freedom, you know. I mean, she knew it was coming, but at least getting it on the record, you know. So, but yeah, she's like, no matter what happens here today, the truth is coming out. It is coming out. So.
And can you give us an overview of, you know, I put on the facts and an update today of the 57 months, 2-year suspension, all that kind of stuff. So that'll come out later. I'm not really concerned about that. What I wanted to hear you give me a wrap up on is the voicing of and verbal appeal. And then at 3 minutes or so after that, she did a written appeal. So if you could give us an overview of that.
So she had 14 days to file an appeal. And I know from personal experience, or at least in a civil situation, if you miss an appeal deadline, it's almost impossible to do anything after that. So I knew that was a very hard deadline. So, and he, right before he finished everything, he said, you can file an appeal. You have 14 days. You can file it with the clerk today if you'd like. So as soon as it was over, or Lloyd spoke up and said, I think that she would like to file one to get on the record. And then somehow it was like automatic or whatever. So I thought it was, funnily enough, it was kind of interesting. The judge is gone. We're kind of standing there, and the clerk is like, here, I just need you to sign this. I was like, to make it a monetary instrument, perhaps? You know, so it's kind of a great example of what we had just, you know, spent however long talking about. She mentioned the clerk's ledger several times throughout the day, but it was, I just thought it was kind of ironic that was the one thing she had to do, was put her signature on the appeal before she could leave. But I also think that maybe that was some of the missing documents or whatever. She wanted to make sure that it was 100% on the record that she filed one today.
Yes.
You know, so at least that was in the progress, in process. Because like I said, that deadline is almost impossible to overcome if you missed it.
Well, and all law is verbal and in the moment. And so that's why it was done in essence both ways. So in other words, Heather had to give voice to filing appeal right now. And then she did the paper.
Right.
The clerk gave her a form for the appeal, which she then wrote down. And then the clerk told her that she would file the sentencing first and then file the appeal after.
Appeal. Mm-hmm.
Because,
gotcha.
Not because that's the proper order that one might think logically, but because monetarily that's the proper order that it has to go.
Right. Yep.
Well, I wanted to state something here that I feel it was important. Of course, the judge did not do what Davidson wanted. because Davidson wanted the maximum sentence.
Was like
63, yeah, and 3 years supervised release. And her reasoning, of course, was mainly deterrent. And
because of all of her followers. I was like, you talking about us?
well, I guess I wanted to make sure that got out there, because basically it's to, you know, I mean, I've had folks that have, you know, I'll refer to some as trolls that have come on and said things about all of this whole purported thing, this alleged case. And I will say this once more, and the kinds of things that were done cannot be done. If they could, and I'm sorry, they're talking about deterrent. If it was true that you could use a valid routing number and any old number you chose, I think we'd all have a lot more money. So when we're talking about deterrent, it's BS for partly that reason, because that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. I mean, there's no way that even works. So bottom line, for me, I'll go back to that one thing right there. I don't care what account number you try to use in any system. If it doesn't exist, you're not going to move money. People, come on, really?
Well,
I'm sorry.
The deterrent, too, phrased in a way of using your brain and actual critical thinking.
Yes.
And looking around and putting together what you're feeling.
It's just overcoming that threshold, you know.
Yeah, just ask yourself this question. This is my parting shot for all of this, is ask yourself a question. If it were that easy to get money of any kind,
not just money, but
do you think,
millions.
I mean, it doesn't really even matter. To me, if it was that easy, somebody would have stopped it by now. What are they worried about deterrent shit? I'm sorry, but that just so makes no sense. All anybody has to do is just think about it a little bit, just for 5 minutes, and ask yourself a few questions about it.
Well,
even at that most simple level.
And one other note on that is, if in fact banks, its protocol as USAA claims to fund the $38 million to someone before it's actually in their account and let you go cash in things, and in this they did in my case with a couple million interest on money that doesn't, then I think every bank would be having a run on the bank from all their customers. So
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they would always say money that didn't belong to them or money that wasn't theirs. And I'm like, well, first of all, again, and they of course put in there that USAA was the identified victim here. I was like, how does that work as an entity or corporation? And I looked at some of the sentencing guidelines, and I don't even know if even if they were valid, I don't know, only certain crimes or whatever are even eligible for restitution or whatever. And then, so, yeah. But there we go, using logic again.
Right. Well, there's no living entities that are involved in any of this. You know, they're all corporations. Okay, so any final thoughts on?
Oh yes, now we have to tell you about some. We have to tell you about some energetic stuff that went on.
Okay. Great.
Because it was a beautiful sunny day, as anyone who looked at some of our stuff on Facebook could see. It was pretty outside, all kinds of sun and everything. We get in the courtroom, and I'm not sure at what point it began to storm.
like right on cue. There was like the bolt of lightning, and it was, I think she had just said something that was perfect, and it was like boom. And then later on,
it was about the Federal Reserve being corrupt.
And it went, you know, I was like,
it was just too perfect. And because about the time that all of that started, it started lightning and thundering and raining really, really hard. But by the time it was over, it was gone. So
well,
that was
a storm.
Very fitting.
Yep. It's always here.
Yes,
and
I think so too.
The thumbnail for the video will be Bill's photograph, or actually a crop of Bill's photograph that he took coming in, which is the courthouse building in the back, and where we go one, we go all.
I love that.
Is a reiteration. So that's what Heather's been telling you, is where we go one, we go all, and we're all going in this together.
And she was consistent.
Right.
You know, I've waited for her to say something that contradicted something she said before, and I've yet to hear that. Everybody else, however, is really good at that. You know. Yeah.
Boy, those lawyers. But at any rate, and I'll tell you something else I noticed too. Now, want to share that. Keep your eyes out for the USA Today. I'm sure there'll be another slander piece in that. As a young man by the name of Travis was there today for the first time. Yes, he didn't know anything about the case, but he was assigned.
Was Jason Alexander there?
No, he was not. You mean Christian Alexander?
I'm sorry, Christian. Yes.
That's okay. I was like, wait a minute, Jason Alexander's he's an actor. No, so that's why I say USA Today will probably do another, erroneous piece. I told him too. I said, well, because I noticed he was wearing USA Today credentials, yeah. Because he said he was with the News Sentinel, but then I saw it said USA Today. I said, oh. I said, you guys wrote that erroneous piece last time and said they were sovereign citizens, which is an oxymoron and not even possible. So I hope you'll do a little more research this go. But probably not. It takes a bunch of citizen journalists, a bunch of old ladies willing to go, 4 hours from home to get the real truth. Sorry, I had to say it. I had to say it.
Okay, any last thoughts to wrap up? Sheila or David or Lisa?
I'm exhausted. It was a very emotional day.
It definitely was.
Yeah.
I think the transcript will be great. A lot of good info in there.
Okay, let me ask you one thing from a being standpoint then. And if you would feel into your heart when you connect with this question as opposed to right to your head. So you all went individually as beings to this, and you're humans, and you sat through it, and was there any emotion that was kind of a disconnect between from the knowing of your heart and the being of your head in what you saw unfold, what the result was gavelled?
If I'm understanding your question properly for myself, there's no disconnection. I have a lot of emotions involved. Mm-hmm. For Heather, of course, her children, most especially. I was not aware that the ages until court today. Mm-hmm. Is it okay to share that?
It's already a public record. We don't have to do it again, but people can go read and look it up.
Okay. All right. Well, I wasn't. That was not something that I was aware of, and in truth, a lot of sadness for folks that purport to be really smart, for folks that I don't know. I personally, I wasn't sure if I felt that any of them were in their hearts at all. But I feel really sad for most of them too.
Mm-hmm.
It was a heavy room today. And for that reason, the major disconnect that the people were having from their own hearts was huge. The chasm is huge. And I guess it felt poignant for the big steps we as humanity are embarking on right now. They're really, really large. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what I thought was going to happen today, but I kind of knew that it all had to play out. I mean, it would have to, wouldn't it? And so I just wanted to really honor that these were lives that I was witnessing, that this, just the full impact that this was having on everyone, and tried to stay in my heart and connect for those that can't at this moment.
Yeah, definitely very heavy room. I was hanging on every word. I felt like no objections really. Garland didn't. He seemed to give her a lot of leeway, considering. Yeah, and I had been thinking about that ahead of time. Just do they realize that this is people's lives? And I mean, it's so me, and I feel like anybody who has any commitment of time at all to look into what actually, was the evidence. It's so obvious that what they're saying happened did not happen, and that there was tremendous deception going on. But I wonder, like, I was thinking any other day that they were doing a sentencing, what would that look like? Is it just a transaction to them? I mean, just like kidnapping someone without a warrant, I don't know. It's weird. It doesn't seem like that I don't know, the magnitude of locking someone away for what he said was a median sentence or whatever, so he didn't give her the whole thing, I guess is a plus, but he didn't give her the minimum either. And then he tried to say that because she had done like an oral, basically, motion challenging the pre-sentence, but that was kind of interesting. He was like, but I'll consider that. And he's like, there's two different ways to challenge that. One is veering off the, I don't know. It was just interesting that he said that as well. Almost like, she's jumped through how many hoops and it's still not enough, so based on that, we're gonna, still give you a sentence that I'm sure was written ahead of time.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too that you.
And I was expecting Davidson, when he was like, "Do you have any objection to the sentence?" I was expecting her to be like, "Yeah, we want the electric chair, maximum penalty, blah blah blah." But she's like, "No." But yeah, I didn't see anything from either Savolto or Davidson that I don't know. I just didn't see any part behavior that I would say it looked like another day to them.
Right.
Anyway.
You mentioned, I think it's interesting. Just turn your volume down just a little bit. Yeah. You mentioned.
Are you sure? Because we won't get to hear you at all if we do that. I'm kind of scared on the microphone.
Okay. So you mentioned that they weren't taking into consideration people's lives, and I think there's it's kind of an interesting cosmic irony there, because this case is everyone's case. This case is about revealing all that has been going on
Right.
to everyone's lives. And so, you know, so that same comment taken just, you know, out of the context of just Heather as the focus, or Heather and Randy as the focus. Randy comes next week. But really, it's on the collective.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, it's so ironic to see the proceedings and know that, you know, she's not greedy. She's not looking for fame. She's been consistently saying that this is everybody. Everybody protected everybody. That's what the trust documents were. You know, be malicious or take advantage or what have you. And kind of like, I don't know. It's just ironic that exactly what you're saying, that it seems, you know, they're so quick to laugh it off or whatever, and dismiss it and just, you know, as frivolous or stupid or ignorant or
well, none of us really know.
You know?
Yeah, see, none of us really know how much any of them really know about any of what's going on.
But their behavior, I mean, it didn't seem,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was very interesting contrast.
Yeah.
okay, great. Well, thank you very much for sharing the day and letting everybody be there through you. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for talking with us and helping us get it out there too. So appreciate
Same
you.
time next week.
Yeah, I guess so, right?
Yep.
Okay, well, for my crew, all the usual things will be in all the usual places. And I'm tired, so now I'm looking for a glass of wine in case anybody's interested.
All right.
So,
Thanks, Susie.
thank you,
Good night.
BZ. Mwah.